Police emergency, what's the problem?
I've lost my 8-year-old daughter. She's been missing about an hour and 3/4 now.
Right. Was she playing with anybody at all?
She was playing with her brothers and her little sister, and she sort of walked away from them.
And what's the name of the little one that's missing?
Sarah.
Viewer discretion is advised for this educational documentary. Welcome or welcome back to Dark Case Documentaries. I bring you true crime, disturbing stories and other things that you may later regret knowing with regular uploads every week. Please do join the quickly growing, incredibly supportive Dark Case family by hitting subscribe now and turning on notifications. Remember, choosing to be kind can save a life in many ways. Thank you so much for choosing to be here with me. Our love and respect goes out to those that knew and loved Sarah and all those affected by this case. Sarah Payne was born on October the 13th, 1991. Her home was Hersham in Surrey. As an 8-year-old girl, she spent her free time playing with her older brothers Lee and Luke. Occasionally, her younger sister Charlotte would tag along too. Sarah was a loving daughter to her parents, sharing a name with her mother and closely tied to her father Michael. She was a typical young girl who enjoyed being outside and engaging in playful activities. The 4 siblings were together all the time. They visited their grandparents most weekends to roam the fields near their house. Although they experienced their tiffs, they were a close-knit family that all enjoyed being together. The kids looked out for each other like the best of friends. Hersham is a small, quaint village in Surrey. Whilst it's not the most popular place to visit, those that do can enjoy long walks and tranquility. On July the 1st, 2000, Sarah and her family were enjoying another peaceful weekend. They were at Sarah's grandparents' house in Kingston Gorse. This is a beautiful seaside location in West Sussex. Her grandparents had 4 acres of land. This meant that the kids had free roam to play, all whilst giving Michael and Sarah the security of knowing the kids were safe outside by themselves. Sarah and her siblings were doing their normal activity, playing in the cornfields near the house. It was the perfect place for a classic game of hide and seek. Sarah had been running, trying to get away from the seeker when she fell and hit her head. Her older brother Luke had found her crying, but it said that he was rather insensitive to the injuries that she had sustained. The two then got into one of their routine tiffs. This resulted in Sarah running away through the fields back towards the grandparents' house. Shortly after, the siblings went to follow Sarah back to the grandparents' house, but they didn't see her walking back. They looked for her far and wide, eventually coming to the road leading towards the home and seeing no sign of her. When brother Lee arrived at the edge of the field in pursuit of Sarah, he saw a white van driving down the road with an older man in the driver's seat. The man waved at Lee as he passed by. He described the man as scruffy and unkempt, quoting him as being greasy and stuff. When it was abundantly clear that Sarah could not be found, the siblings ran back to the house to alert the adults. And then all hell broke loose for the Payne family. Within hours, a manhunt had been initiated which spanned the entire country. Everyone was on the lookout for Sarah Payne. But where could she possibly have gone? Was she just lost? Had she run away? Was the bang to the head worse than they thought? Or had she been taken? When questioning the family, Lee mentioned the sighting of the old man in the white van. The police were quick to pursue the now very real fact that Sarah had been abducted. Sarah's parents quickly made numerous TV appearances, pleading for the return of their beloved daughter.
Let her go.
Let her go.
Or if you know that someone's got an extra child somehow, or whatever,
you know,
get in touch with your local police, you know.
Look around you, everybody just look around you.
Meanwhile, the police scrambled to track down a mysterious man in the van. The first order of business was to make a list of possible suspects. The kids were away from home, so who would have known that Sarah would have been with her grandparents? Was this all just up to chance? On the other hand, the Payne children went to visit their grandparents frequently, and anyone could have been watching Sarah during her usual frolics in the cornfield. The police very much had their work cut out. Kingston Gorse was an extremely safe, wealthy town, somewhere where celebrities and sports players would often go on holiday. It was secluded and quaint, and there was only one road in and out. Whoever had taken Sarah had to have previously known about the cornfield where the kids frequented, meaning that it had to be someone who lived in or around Kingston Gorse, someone that was familiar with the area. Because of Sarah's age, there was an obvious way to narrow down the list of locals, the offender registry. Luckily for the investigators, there were only 8 people on that list in the Kingston Gorse area. This allowed them to question each person individually. Officer Chris Saunders was one of the detectives who was assigned to go door to door. The first name on his list was a man named Roy Whiting. Whiting had been released from prison 2 years before, convicted with kidnapping and attacking a preteen girl. He was sentenced to a 4-year term in prison. After his release, he was one of the first people in England to be entered onto the offenders registry list. Officer Saunders arrived at Whiting's residence. He rang the doorbell numerous times without response, convinced that Whiting was avoiding him. He decided to call the landline inside the house. Here, Whiting eventually picked up. He finally allowed Officer Saunders inside his home. There, Saunders explained to him that they were investigating the disappearance of an 8-year-old child. Saunders immediately became suspicious of Whiting, not only because of his reluctance to answer the door, but also because of his reaction to the reason Saunders was standing in his home. He basically didn't react at all. When Saunders questioned him about his whereabouts the day before, Whiting answered in, according to Saunders, an automatic and unnatural way. He said that he was in the next town over during the time of Sarah's abduction, and he was in bed sleeping peacefully by 9:30 p.m. His behaviour during this interview alone catapulted Roy Whiting to the top of the suspect list. He was the main person of interest in this case. Later that evening, Roy would be arrested on that suspicion. To their advantage, the case had received national media attention, with an established tip line for people to call and share information about Sarah's disappearance. This tip line would prove to be extremely useful, as Cynthia Reed, an eyewitness, had called to let investigators know that she had seen the white van that Lee had described. She saw this van leaving the scene of Sarah's abduction, fearing that Sarah was most likely inside of it. Police had struck gold once again. Whiting had been bragging about the white van that he had bought just less than a month before. Whiting's confidence in revealing this information had come from the fact that he had taken steps to make cosmetic changes to the van, and he did this in the days following Sarah's abduction. Whiting had purchased new doors. This added windows to the back of the van, changing its appearance. Despite this slight confession, it still wasn't enough to find Roy Whiting guilty of Sarah's abduction, and when the time came, they had to release him from police custody.
We're trying to stay as positive as we possibly can, you know? And Sarah, if you're watching, Mommy loves you. And we miss you. And we're looking for you, darling, and we're going to find you. Okay? We're going to find you. And you'll be home. You'll be home, darling.
Yeah, I'm still hopeful. We've got to try and keep our spirits up in some way.
16 days after Sarah's initial disappearance, this kidnapping case turned into one of murder. Sadly, Sarah's body was discovered by police 18 miles from Kingston Gorse, found in a shallow grave just off the roadway. She had been badly attacked, with almost all of her hair being pulled out. The very next day, the tip line would prove its usefulness once again. Someone had discovered a child's shoe at a petrol station. Sarah's mother was able to confirm that it belonged to her daughter. This amount of new evidence was concrete enough to make serious chargeable connections to Roy Whiting. They got to work to analyse every aspect of both Sarah's body and the shoe. On July the 23rd, Roy Whiting was arrested for stealing a car and then crashing it. This gave the police the perfect avenue for inspecting Roy's notorious white van. Upon inspection, police had found a receipt inside the van. The receipt was from the same petrol station where Sarah's shoe had been discovered. The timestamp on it read 10:30 p.m. But Whiting had said that he was peacefully asleep by 9:30 p.m. Inside, they also found children's toys, a spade, restraints, baby oil, candy, and a child's blanket. Whiting was establishing a pattern. Directly after his previous abduction, he had purchased new doors for his red Ford Sierra to cover his tracks. But now the Littlehampton police were onto him. They had to continue their work on this physical evidence. Due to decomposition, it was difficult for coroners to define what exact injuries Sarah had endured during her abduction and passing. But Sarah's hair and shoe would prove to be the key to what the police needed for charging Roy Whiting. But at this time, it took months to analyse. Sarah's hair contained fibres from a sweater inside the van, and the sweater also contained hairs that matched Sarah. Contributing to this evidence, fibres from the passenger seat were also found on Sarah's shoe. This evidence is what the police needed to charge the already incarcerated Roy Whiting.
You are charged that on Saturday, the 1st of July 2000, at Kingston Gorse, West Sussex, you unlawfully took or carried away Sarah Evelyn Isabel Payne against her will, and that's contrary to common law. You are also charged that between Saturday, the 1st of July 2000, and Monday, the 3rd of July 2000, at Kingston Gorse, West Sussex, or elsewhere, you murdered Sarah Evelyn Isabel Payne.
He was now on the hook for the abduction and lethal attack of Sarah 7 months earlier. Roy Whiting's trial began on November the 14th, 2001. His defence denied his involvement in what had happened to Sarah Payne. Over the next 4 weeks, the prosecution would attempt to convince the jury of Whiting's guilt, during which they heard from Lee Payne and his account of his interaction with Whiting. He identified him as the unkempt, greasy man that he saw that day. They would also invite more witnesses, like Cynthia Reed, who had seen him driving away, as well as others who had seen his van parked on the side of the road where Sarah was buried. A lot of the evidence was circumstantial, but it was hard to deny the physical connection Sarah had to that van. But the defence did their best to explain it all away. The defence asserted that there was nothing that could tie Whiting to Sarah. The physical evidence they had was generalised. They said the fibres in her hair could have matched numerous sweaters, and the fibres on the passenger seat could be from any van, not specifically Roy Whiting's. They also said that the remainder of the prosecution's evidence was nowhere near concrete, explaining that the restraints found in the van were too large to use on a child, and the receipt for the petrol station wouldn't have been left in an obvious place, not if he knew it would incriminate him. As far as the defence's evidence for Roy's innocence, they presented mud samples from the spade in Roy's van. This sample didn't match the mud at the location where Sarah's body was found. They were pushing the point that there was in fact no connection between him and Sarah Payne. The defence's closing and central argument was that Roy was an open book to the police. He never hid anything, leaving all of his supposed evidence for the police to find with ease. Why would he do these things and testify openly in court if he was guilty? This did prove to be a rather convincing argument. Whiting even admitted in court that he had cleaned his van the day after Sarah's disappearance. This left the decision of the case completely up in the air for both parties. The jury went out to deliberate. Sarah's family waited apprehensively at the possibility that Roy Whiting would walk free. However, the jury returned a verdict of guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison.
Moments after Whiting was taken to the cells, Sarah and Michael Payne faced the world's media.
This doesn't make us happy, but justice has been done. Sarah can rest in peace now. But let's make sure that this stops happening time and time again. People are being let out of prison when everybody concerned knows that this is going to happen again.
As Whiting had committed similar crimes before, there was anger amongst the family and general public that this could have been prevented if Whiting was monitored more heavily. Because of this, media outlets throughout Britain stood with Sarah's family. They vowed to reveal the names and locations of similar offenders throughout the country. Sarah's mother rallied and petitioned for stricter monitoring, fighting tooth and nail for change over a number of years. Both parents appeared on television, news interviews and took photo opportunities. And in 2011, 10 years after Sarah's passing, Sarah's Law was passed. It allowed parents to formally ask the police whether someone who has access to their child has a record of committing crimes against children. This law has proven to be extremely protective. There were over 1,600 inquiries by parents in the first year. This resulted in hundreds of identified offenders, and it could have saved over 200 children from suffering. Do you think the punishment fits the crime here? What do you think can be done to avoid something like this happening again in the future? Let me know down in the comments. Please do hit like if you appreciate what I'm doing here. Thank you to everyone in the Dark Case crew. You too can become a channel member for just 99p. A huge thank you to my patrons. Your support makes a massive difference. You too can support my work and be thanked in every video for just $5 per month. So thank you to Rachel David, Kathy Green, David James, Addie Alexander, Karen Jones, El Palmieri, James Harrington, Shane Woodward, Faster River, Stacey Krogerus, Summer Chambers, Mona Corona, Cepheid Variable, Anthony Watson, Jason Coward, Guardian Paler, Jeremy Sebranek, Joy Burton, Dawn Crock, Michelle Mims, Natalie Lundquist, Anita Ford, Christina Garzon, Annette Parkins, Austin Lounsbury, Joe Ricciardi, Leisha Ball, and Darlene. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.